Well, it's Saturday morning. It's raining. So I decided to do more with this. So I've taken the Walksnail out of its little carrier, as you can see, completely. And I made up a cable this morning. You can see it coming out right here for the power, ground, and UART control. You see it running down through the airplane. Well, I'm going to go ahead and just unplug this right there. There's the Walksnail. We'll set it aside because when I plugged in this cable was made up of with one of those 4 pin connectors I used on some of the rest of it. I think these are technically 4 LED strips, but I've got ground, voltage, transmit and receive in these 4 wires, exactly as it comes out of this connector for the Walksnail. It's not pretty functional. I go more for functional than pretty. I'm just doing this all for the first times. Once I've built 10 or 20 of these, then I'll start standardizing my builds and work on beauty rather than just functionality. So that was easy to solder up. 4 little connectors, 4 little wires, and a snap together connector so the top can be removed easily. This comes out that far. Thought I'd made it too long earlier, but didn't turn out to be. But let me unplug this power. I've already been playing with it. When I plugged it in, oops, damn it, got a bad surprise. Now I don't know if you're going to be able to see this. I guess I should take this camera off the tripod and try to show it better. Okay, I think you're going to be able to see this as I pick up this connector. This connector should have voltage in the red wire, ground in the black wire, and the yellow and white are transmit and receive on UART 3. As I pull this connector up, you'll notice something. The pin for the power is there, the pin for the ground is there, but I didn't solder any pins onto right there. If I push those aside, right down there's the 2 holes for the pins for TX3 and RX3 that I want to use as the transmit and receive on this. Isn't that wonderful? I have to take this all apart and solder 2 pins on those, in those 2 holes right there, so I can use UART 3 for the TX and RX on the Walksnail. Oh, Lordy. So there's the cable pulled out of the fuselage. This is the connector that snaps together when you put the front hatch on. And this goes back to the flight controller, and like I said, it will be power, ground. It's actually, the yellow's a receive pin and the white's a transmit, because on the board where the yellow goes is a transmit pin, so this has to be receive, and white is a receive pin on the board, so it has to be transmit out of the Walksnail to talk to that. So I was just going to pop this connector down on 4 pins, but there's only 2 of them there. So made up this nice little long cable. Not nice, it's functional. This morning, and sorted it up and plugged it in, and no joy. Well, I did get joy on the power and ground. That's why you saw the bench power supply was connected to this power connector right here, and I did power it up. I guess I should show you on the flight controller what I was doing. So this is the H743 wing,
And I'll talk about this several times through this video. When I was hooking up the 1.2 video transmitter that I embedded in the wing of this Skyhunter, I was going to hook it here for signal, voltage, and ground. And here was where the camera would go. The camera that's on the hatch for the first Skyhunter, when it's used on either of them, the camera goes here for video, voltage, and ground. That's it. And I figured to keep me from doing anything wrong, if I use these same pins for voltage and ground for the Walksnail, I couldn't have them both connected at the same time, the VTX that's in the wing and the Walksnail VTX. So I needed two more. Here's the UART right here for the other four. So I figured putting it in a 4-pin DuPont connector right across these four was my best bet. I would have voltage, ground, transmit, and receive. You'll sort of hear this throughout the rest of this video. Kind of coming back and doing this in post, showing this particular setup. While I'm here, you'll hear later in the video when I'm talking about hooking it all back up, and I'm hooking back up the Dragon Link, that I'm only getting I'm only using this single pin right here for the Dragon Link. And that's S-bus out of the Dragon Link on a transmit pin on the Dragon Link is going to this receive pin right here on the H743 for control. I don't use these two because this 4V5 voltage is only 500 milliamps. That Dragon Link can pull twice that. Well, the servo rail over here is capable of, let's see, where is it? The servo rail is capable of, I think it's 18 amps. Oh man. Oh. Yep, it's 8 amps right here. VX, this voltage right here through this servo rail. VX right here is capable of 8 amps. 16 times more than this over here. So that's why I'm using that. So I'm using on S8 here, I'm using ground and voltage for the Dragon Link. And then I'm also using all of these for the telemetry on the Dragon Link. These are being used for the Compass GPS module. That one is being used for the S-bus from the Dragon Link. This RSS iPad has a wire hooked to it, and it runs right up through here and back and around and over to the Dragon Link. And then I'm using these 4 pins for the Walksnail. These 6 pins if I'm using analog front end. And I'm using 1 through 4 down through the servo rail. I'm using 8 to pick up voltage, and going to use 9 and 10 for pan and tilt. That's all that's on this. You're going to see it was good I opened this up because I had made this voltage for the 1.2. I put a bridge, solder bridge across these 2 pads, so that would be 9 volts instead of 5 volts. That's not enough for the 1.2 transmitter. I almost closed it back up without realizing that. And this morning when I played with it, as soon as I put that 4-pin DuPont connector down on that flight controller, I knew I didn't have these 2 connected, so I wasn't even going to do what I was ready to do, which was start playing with the OSD. I had it powered yesterday playing with stuff. I wanted to go a step further. So right then I knew I had to take this out and solder these 2 pins in. Well, this morning when I first played with it, it was 8.9 volts because this was 9 volts because of this being soldered. I would have had to taken it back out because when I put the 1.2 video transmitter on it, I bet it wouldn't have worked at 9 volts. So I had not bridge these two pads to rise 9 volts to 12. I did that while I did this other. Wait a minute real quick here. That's a Maytech 1.2 video transmitter, and I think I may have come in and looked at that in here and found that it, differently from the ready-made RC 1.2 I'd used before, could run off of 6 to 36 volts DC. So the 9 volts was going to be successful for that 1.2 video transmitter I put in the wing. That's why the 9 volt rise to 12 pad was not soldered in that. So I was mistaken. You'll see it later in this video. I find that problem and started thinking about the ready-made RC 1.2 that needs a minimum of 12. It wouldn't work last year on 9 when I built the first Sky Hunter up, and I had to take it all apart and do that solder pad. And after I fixed the 9 volt rise to 12 solder pad on the first Sky Hunter, the video transmitter started working. But that wouldn't have actually been a problem on this one. The 9 volts would have been, again, 50% higher than it had to be for that particular, this video transmitter that's actually embedded in the wing. So everything's getting 12 volts now. Could be better for it. I do want to go back and clarify one small point. When I said I'm using all 6 of these pins for the telemetry on the Dragon Link, I'm not actually using this 5 volts right here. I do have that pin in just so the friction of 6 pins will help hold this whole connector on. That's the way I do things. I just clip that in the back so there's no wire going to this one. I'm actually only using 5 out of the 6 pins here because you can't feed the Dragon Link transmitter voltage from this pin and voltage from this pin at the same time without blowing things up. I want to make that clear. I don't want to be telling people wrong information. So hooked to the Dragon Link is this RSSI pad. By the way, that's on pin 8 for Ardu, it looks like. Little tidbits of information. That little number right there, pin 8, is very important. Do use this ground and all of these for the Dragon Link, and I'm using this pin and this pin and these 2 here. That is it for the Dragon Link. So apply voltage here and ground. You can do multiple grounds, that won't hurt a darn thing. This ground's actually connected also. And the transmit receive, crew to send a request to send here. And this pin. That's all. Just wanted to make that clear. It just scares me that people might listen to what I say using all of these pins. This one's actually not connected. The wire is clipped behind it because I'm picking up that voltage over here.
Well, there's the equipment tray out, what I call it. And boy, I guess it came out pretty easy. I guess it was all subconscious. I knew I was going to have to take this apart many times that I built it like this. So, man, what a bummer. Let me get some of these wires cleaned up. Aileron, elevator, throttle's not plugged in, then rudder. That's just the power on S8 for the Dragon Link to be able to get enough amps. And then I'll put the pan and tilt on 9 and 10. But you can see more easily now, if I get this stuff out of the way, that TX3 and RX3 have no pins on them. Man, Well, there's everything disconnected. That RSSI signal wire there is going to be the bummer. God, I've just got to get that board up enough to put 2 pins right there. I guess I'm going to straighten out the little bit of awkwardness in the way it's put in there, get it straighter. Then I'll have to do the accelerometers. But this is just getting into software installation and tuning, so trying to finish the physical build. Let's just go ahead and do it and get it over with. I cut this little tie wrap right here that was holding the RSSI green wire down and the telemetry portion of the Dragon Link down. Now I've got more ability to move this around. I think I'm just going to take these screws out on the back, and that'll let me get to that enough to solder 2 pins on that. Bummer, bummer, bummer. Well, I got it busted open enough to where I think I can do the work. I'm just going to try to solder it real quick. I guess this kind of makes a point for putting all the pins on when you solder them up the first time instead of being selective. Well, TX3 and RX3 right there now have pins on them. There it is, all back together. Now it has 2 more pins, the 2 white pins right there. So we're going to go voltage, ground, which has already been tested. And then this is the board transmit, which will get receive from the Walksnail. This is the board receive, which will get the transmit pin from the Walksnail. So I'm going across those 4 pins right there. I didn't put these 2 in because I was using the 1.2 video transmitter on this Skyhunter, and it doesn't have smart audio. So I did not put those in. Yeah, I'm trying to brace my hand so it doesn't shake as much. That's why they weren't soldered on. I decided to use those pins because the voltage here is 9 volts, and that's above the 6. Don't want to use the full 6S because, in my humble opinion, here a lot of people are blowing some of this up. I think it's more goggles than this other stuff, but I'm going to stay away from the 25.2 on the top of this voltage range. I'm going to try to stay someplace in the middle. So this right here was the best I could do. I didn't do the 9 volt rise to 12 on this, which might have been better than the 9, but it's above the 6. It's 50% above the 6. So because I was going to use the VTX here, the 1.2 for signal on this white, voltage for it, and ground here, well, that's not going to work. I do need to open this back up and do the 9 volt rise to 12 to use the 1.2 that's on there. When I'm using the other front end of the other Skyhunter, I will put that VTX analog across these 3 pins and the camera that I'll use on that one across these back 3 pins. Whereas when I'm using the Walksnail, I want to put it across these 4 pins. So I do have to take that back apart again and do the 9 volt rise to 12 pad. This would have never powered up that 1.2, and I guess I'm glad I took it back out and found this. Okay, I hope you're going to be able to see this. Right there is the 9 volt rise to 12, those 2 copper looking pads there. I have to bridge that, and then this 9 volts will come up to 12, so I've got to put a little sorter bridge there. I hope you can see that. There it is bridged, and I came in from the left with my soldering iron so I didn't destroy that little that first surface mounted component right there that you've seen me destroy one of these boards before that way. I got the flight controller stuck back down with double-sided tape, and I got it kind of straight this time. Wow. I figured I would hit this one more time as I was putting this back together. This is the power and ground for the Dragon Link transmitter, and it's coming over to the RC8 just to pick up ground and power, because this has the availability of like 18 amps, whereas the this power right here is only half of what the Dragon Link can draw. So looking around here, this is the RSSI. Guess that should be under that. Put that back there. Put this back down. Oh man. Yeah, okay. And 9 and 10 here will be pan and tilt. So this is the telemetry from the Dragon Link, and it goes right up there on all those yellow connectors, 6 of them straight across, just as if it was a telemetry radio. There we go.
Okay, stop everything. This is me in post again, and I want to make this abundantly clear. Look right there on that connector. There's the ground wire that I've told you about, and there's the empty hole where the voltage doesn't go in because I'm picking it up over here. I just want to make that abundantly clear. I'm only using 5 wires out of this, not 6, and I'm not taking a voltage here because of this voltage here going to the Dragon Link. Don't do 2 voltages. You will blow things up.
That really needs to be bent over this way. Oh, Lordy. There we go. That's more how that needs to run right there. Because the compass GPS has to be put on the next 6 pins down, and then the control for the Dragon Link goes on these pins here. Let me look at that. Yep, I think that's right. That goes down there. We don't get ground or voltage in this connector. We just get S-bus out on the brown wire. Oh, that's a 5-pin connector. That's why. Okay, so the compass GPS module has to be plugged in between those 2 connectors right there. We can re-tie wrap all this stuff down over here. And then we come in with either the 1.2 transmitter on these 3 pins now, and a camera on those 3 pins with one front hatch on the Skyhunter, and then on the other hatch we go across these 4 pins with a Walksnail. Boy, I'm glad sort of to have opened up this and fixed it, because now this pin is 12 volts instead of 9 volts. The 9 volts would not have powered up that 1.2 video transmitter. So tie wrap these down, slide this bad boy back in. I have to put my leads back on all the servo pins there, but well, there it is, all put back together. This is the cable for the Walksnail. It's right here. I did put an extra tie wrap right there and put this one back on here. I put the connectors back on. This is a Y connector for the ailerons. This is elevator, throttle goes in there, it comes up from the ESC, and then rudder is connected here. So all I have to do is connect the airspeed sensor to this port, plug in the GPS module there, and slide this in. It's ready. If I use the other front end, I'll take this connector off back here. I won't connect anything to this in the front, just leave it hanging. and I will hook the camera and the VTX. VTX is in this platform. The camera would be on the front of the first Skyhunter's hatch. I would hook the camera here and the VTX there. So it's good. I had to open this up because it got my 9 volts up to 12. We'll see that in just a second. I did work on the sequence for putting this equipment tray back in. I need to slide it in just a little bit, and then I can hook up the 2 items I have to hook, is the airspeed sensor and the GPS compass module. Here has to be hooked to the top of it, and then it slides in just a little more, and this connector gets hooked up on the bottom for the ESC, and then the control wire for the ESC gets hooked into the flight controller, and then it's all slid in. There we are with it just set in there, and the GPS compass connected to the flight controller and the airspeed sensor connected to the flight controller. And as you know, now I have to get my hand down in there to hook that plug in on that ESC underneath, and at that same time as I come out, I will bring out the ESC control wire and hook it to the flight controller. I've got it all back together. Everything's back in. These are my control connections: aileron, elevator, and rudder. Throttle's been reconnected down in there. Everything's reconnected. I've got external power going in through this hole from the bench power supply. I've got the wires coming out of that hole for the Walksnail. So now we actually have 4 wires connected instead of 2. I was playing with it earlier today. I wanted to do OSD, but found those 2 pins missing. Then I found the voltage wasn't correct. So now we're going to see how much of that I fixed. Okay guys, I know the camera's all wonky, but I'll show you what's going on over there in a second. I have got this working now on my 55-inch monitor on my bench, so I can see it really good. So a little few points right here real quick. Right up here you can see 118.9 gigabyte SD card in the receiver, 6.8 gigabytes free in the transmitter. We're on channel 3, standby mode, 37 milliseconds. It's 4 meters away from the receiver, 25 megabits per second. I have 15.2 volts going in from a battery into the receiver, and we have 11.7 volts coming out of the flight controllers, where this morning I had 8.9. I changed that to 9 volt pull up to 12, so now I've got 11.7 volts to the Walksnail from the flight controller, and that is it. I've got to do some software setups to set up the OSD and get it going, but I think the hardware is where it should be right now. I can't record this screen with my screen recorder because this is a second HDMI input on the camera, on the TV. I'm just going in the second HDMI input on it. The other one is, the first HDMI is from my computer. So you see here, if I grab the control and go to HDMI 1 for an input, I am viewing my ground control station computer. And if I go to HDMI 2, that's the input from the Walksnail receiver. So I can't really record this except the way I'm doing it right now with my cell phone on a tripod. You'll see some jerking around. I'll show you what's going on with that. If I take this off the tripod and we move right over here to the platform, that jerking around is because this is just hanging. That's why it's not in good orientation. And the jerking around is because of the vibrations from that fan where I've got it blowing on that transmitter, because that sucker, even at 25 milliwatts, gets hot as all get out. So now I've got to do some software things, and we should be able to start playing with OSD and get that running.
And I really thought this morning I was going to plug on one 4-pin DuPont connector and be at the point I'm at right now. Fooled me, didn't it? So we need to set up the software for that. So I am connected here on TX3 and RX3. So that's UART3. So Arduino pilot mapping. TX3 and RX3 is serial 4 to Arduino. So I have to come in here now and go to serial 4 parameters. Serial 4. And I have to change this to 42. It's a display port. I'm just doing what I'm told. We'll see if this works or not. And I have to change OSD type. OSD underscore type. I think that's one way to get to it. Yes, we can get to it that way. I don't know if we can get to it through this perimeter yet or not, but we'll just do it here. More likely to have success here. So we want to set that to 5. This is an MSP DisplayPort device. So we'll set that to 5 and enter. Now I can write out both those parameters. I don't really have anything saved anywhere yet for this Sky Hunter, I don't think, because I haven't started doing much with it. Yeah, I actually have. We'll just write right over that. It won't matter. So now then, I can reboot the flight controller, bring it up with the Walksnail, and we should have OSD data and be able to start using this area to do what I need to do. This here. We'll see what of this comes up. And it's OSD type over here while I'm here. I thought it was. Yeah, it is. Right there. So I might have been able to come in here and set this to a 5. I don't know. I set it over there in the main parameters because I'm pretty sure that would work. So we'll shut this down and come back up looking at the monitor and see if we have anything yet.
Oh man, guess what I noticed while I was putting the video together? When I was working with this out of the airplane today, there's no SD card in it yet. So I have to take it back out, or had to take it back out so I could put this SD card in the thing. So I'm going to leave it out for what I'm going to continue doing with this. So there. Now there's an SD card in the SD slot on the flight controller. This is the setup we're working with now. Everything's out here. It's connected USB to the flight controller. It's connected to the bench power supply, and it's connected to the Walksnail. The Walksnail has a fan blowing on it to keep it cool. The camera's pointing in some direction. I'm not sure what the camera's viewing right now. So let's power it up and see if we have OSD data. There you go. We have OSD data. And set up the way it is, it certainly doesn't fit all this. So now I have accomplished what I set out to do this morning. Solder up 4 little wires and start getting this OSD actually working. Boy, was I foolish that it was just going to be simple. So I'll start moving this stuff around. I don't need to continue this video, but I would like to talk about some other little things that I did today real quick. This holder is not for the airplane I'm using, but it is convenient for what I'm doing and functions. It's a quick, dirty thing to use. But there's a problem. To get the video out of the transmitter, if I choose to do so, when the Walksnail's screwed down in here, it's hard to get to the USB port. So I needed to change this up. Let me show you what I did.
Okay, I need to cut a hole in this little plastic piece so I can get the USB cable connected for removing files if I find I need to do that. So I need to cut a hole in this side over here. So the first thing I want to do is grab a shape, drop it here, and then let's pull it down a bit. That might do it right there. We'll see here. A little big. I'll put it right there. Doesn't need to be that wide, but that won't matter much. Now then, it is going to cut just a little bit of the floor. I'll make it a hole. And we'll grab everything with Control A and we'll group them and see what we get. I think that's the hole I need. That's all there is to it. Yep, I think that'll let me get the cable in and connect it to it and remove it for flight. So we'll export that out as a .stl file. There we are. Now we'll take that over and print it on the printer.
And there it is, printing. That'll take 2 hours, then we'll see what we've got. So here it is off the printer, and now it has a hole in the side of it where the other one didn't. Just that simple. And now if I mount the Walksnail in it, screw it down on those little posts in there, which will be somewhat like that. Whoops. There we go. Somewhat like that. And now my USB is open. Might have made it a little narrower and a little taller. That's all. There we go. So now I can plug it in and out easily. And the other one will be in the other side and be connected to the flight controller. So that's all kind of finished now. I can play with the OSD a little more. Boy, this got to be a long video, but the meat of it came down to just a few seconds, it seemed like, at the end here for everything I did today, including modifying this and printing it out and then getting the OSD running it all. There's a lot of steps to get to the end. But boy, I like it so far. So there are still some little problems with the OSD. I'll show you just a little bit of that before I close out this video.
Well, Amazon just left, so I do have a new way of capturing this video that I'll show you in the future. I can actually capture the output of the Walksnail to my 55-inch monitor, as you can see here. And you can see one of the little problems with it. You see the plethora of space on the right and left side that isn't being used. And if you come in here to Mission Planner, where the OSD is set up, you can see right here this particular perimeter, I've got it set at 0 and 0, as far up and as far to the left as it can go. This one I've got set as far as the left it can go, and it is down 1. And I did move this one too. As far to the left as it'll go, it's down 3 lines. So that doesn't seem quite right, but we'll just I'll just keep working on this. But I've got what I intended this morning. I can start playing with fonts, etc., 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 figuring out how everybody's moving, got this information so far out, right and left, etc., etc., etc. So that's it for today. We'll hopefully do something tomorrow too. Thank you so much.